Was the Friday before Christmas, and all through the house, everybody was pumped for two weekend games for the Boston Bruins coming up before the holiday break. We're going to preview those and bring you some Bruins news and notes here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, December 22nd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Before we get into it, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, X, Instagram, and you can also find me, my dad jokes, and hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. Bruins playing two games this weekend, one against the Winnipeg Jets, the other against the Minnesota Wild. We'll discuss those teams specifically later on in the show. But one thing you need to know is that Matt Grzelcyk will not be in the lineup for the Bruins. He is listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury you may have seen in, when was it now? Tuesday's game against the Minnesota Wild, the overtime loss. Grzelcyk was hit behind the net, I believe in the first period. He exited the game, but was able to return. It seems as though it's still bothering him, and he will not be able to play. Now, head coach Jim Montgomery said it is a day-to-day situation, and it's possible that he could be back for Saturday's game, but he will not play tonight. In his stead, Mason Lohrei was, he's been up and down the last couple of games as a paper transaction. He was listed as a scratch for Tuesday's game against the Wild, but he's back up and should be back in the lineup for tonight's game. Now, Lohrei has appeared in 13 games for the Bruins so far this season. He's got 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in 15 games, I should say. 6 points in 10 games for the Providence Bruins. So he's been kind of up and down a bit, but has looked pretty good in his time with the Bruins, and I'm excited to see him back in the lineup again. Parker Wotherspoon has really shown enough to remain in the lineup as well, and with Derek Forbort out, now Matt Grzelcyk, they have these 2 young guys that they've settled on as kind of the next men up. During practice, it was Lohrei playing with McAvoy, and then you also had Hampus Lindholm with Brandon Carlo and Wotherspoon skating alongside Kevin Shattenkirk. Those were the pairings in practice on Thursday before they traveled for tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. It's an 8 p.m. Eastern start, so should be a good one tonight, and we'll talk more specifically about that one later on in the podcast. The lines, I had made some line suggestions yesterday. Montgomery did not listen to them. He's keeping Pasternak with Zacha and Marchand. He's got Van Riemsdyk up with Geekie and DeBrusk. Danton Heinen with Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick. And then the fourth line of Lauko, Beecher, and Steen. Not really how I would have done it, but we'll see how those work out here for tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets, a game that we will preview later on in the podcast. Now, before we move on, should mention Matt Poitras, Team Canada, in action here on Friday in pre-tournament play over at the World Juniors in Sweden. And he is lining up with Matthew Savoie and Connor Geekie, both of whom are very highly touted prospects. Geekie, of course, is the brother of Morgan, who's a current Boston Bruin. Connor Geekie was selected 11th overall in 2022. This season, he's got 26 games played, 20 goals, 29 assists for 49 points for the Wenatchee Wild. Matthew Savoie started the season up in Buffalo. He has since been sent back to Wenatchee, and he's played 11 games. He's got 24 points. So Matt Poitras getting a prime spot for Team Canada between a couple very prolific junior scorers. And no doubt, if Poitras was back in the OHL, he'd be among the leading scorers in the OHL. So that is quite a trio for Team Canada debuting today against Switzerland. Speaking of the Geekie family, we're going to touch on the impact that Morgan has had recently on the Boston Bruins here as the podcast continues. And then later on, we will preview the weekend's games against Winnipeg and Minnesota. Sleeper has the best format for daily fantasy hockey. And you know what? A new NHL evening brings all sorts of possibilities. David Pastrnak could record a hat trick. Linus Ullmark could record a 50-save shutout. And you can win big playing on Sleeper. All you have to do is pick whether Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply, but that's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Start paying attention, folks. Get those picks in and start winning big. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Afterwards, check out the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. The first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Let's talk about Morgan Geekie for a moment. Now, one of the reasons why Matt Poitras is able to be over playing for the World Juniors has been the emergence of Morgan Geekie down the middle. He was brought in from Seattle to, play third line center. Started off on the wing with Poitras making the team. And with Pavel Zacha having been injured and Poitras kind of hitting a wall in recent weeks, Geekie has emerged as a very dependable center. He has really solidified that position, not as a, necessarily a bankable goal scorer or an elite playmaker, but he's hard on pucks. He goes to the front of the net. He wins battles. And again, like I mentioned earlier, he practiced Thursday with James Van Riemsdyk and Jake DeBrusk, and he'll try to help those two succeed, and hopefully his ability to win those puck battles will get it to Jake DeBrusk so that he can start putting it in the back of the net. Jim Montgomery, via Fluto Shinzawa, said, if you don't have it, you can't succeed in this league. It's a second and third effort league. Geekie has, in the last 8 games or so, been consistent with his effort. He's been hanging on to more pucks, separating people, and they need that to become more common, end quote. Geekie had just 1 goal in his first 12 games. He missed the next 6 because of an upper body injury, but over his past 5 games, he's got 2 goals, 3 assists, and ever since having moved from right wing next to Patra to the center position, he's been grinding it out, and he has been fantastic for the Boston Bruins. Now, Geekie, as I mentioned, has a brother playing for Team Canada, and he said that his brother Connor has a little more touch with the puck. Geekie's not the most skilled player in his family. His brother's good at finding guys, he said. So is Potsy. They can feed off each other pretty well. So again, that should be a pretty nice line for Team Canada with Connor Geekie, Matthew Savoie playing with Matthew Patra. The Bruins, one of the reasons why they've succeeded is because of their depth down the middle, which is very, very surprising. Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci retired, but Pavel Zacha is third on the team in scoring with 21 points. He's averaging the third highest amount of ice time, and his 0.78 point per game pace and his workload in terms of average ice time are higher than what Bergeron produced last season. He said every player wants to be in those situations, having a little bit more pressure on you, but also being a difference maker and spending more time on the ice, playing the power play, penalty kill, just being there in important moments. He said that once it was clear that those guys were retiring, he put in the extra work to be prepared for this bigger role. He said, when you know they're not coming back the whole summer, you know you're going to get a little more ice time. You've got to be in better shape than you've ever been in before in your life. That was something that was a little bit stressful, he said, but he was also looking at it as an opportunity, something that he was looking for his whole career. Didn't really get it in New Jersey. And coming into this year, he could really show the kind of player that he can be. And I almost think he can take it up to another level even in terms of offensive production. But again, right now, very important. He is averaging more ice time than Bergeron did last season and producing at a higher rate, which is pretty crazy. And the fact that he's on a 4-year, $19 million contract is a real win for Don Sweeney. And then, of course, Charlie Coyle has been his regular solid self, and he's also having a very prolific year offensively. So all the concerns about Boston down the middle have been nullified at the moment by Zacha, Coyle, Geekie, and John Beecher as well, who's played incredibly well on the fourth line. So good on those guys for stepping up. Big tests coming up this weekend against both the Winnipeg Jets and the Minnesota Wild. And we will preview those games here as the podcast continues. eBay Motors has everything you need to make your ride an MVP. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. Again, they have all the parts you need at the prices you want, and it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home a win. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. With the Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. This is available only to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, it's a big weekend for the Boston Bruins. 2 games in 2 nights to wrap up the pre-Christmas schedule. There's only 4 games on the schedule tonight. One of them is our Bruins in Winnipeg to take on a Jets team that is pretty good. And they've got a red-hot player in Gabriel Vilardi who has 10 points over his last 5 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. The line of Vilardi, Mark Scheifele, and Nikolai Ehlers has been just red hot as of late, and they're really carrying the Jets to great heights. This is the first of 2 meetings between these 2 teams. They play again on January 22nd in Boston. Both are stingy defensive teams. In fact, the Bruins allowing only 2.57 goals per game. That's 3rd ranked in the NHL. The Jets are allowing 2.58 goals per game, which is slightly behind at 4th. Offensively, pretty equal as well. Jets 12th ranked at 3.35. Bruins 15th ranked at 3.17. Now, where the game could turn a bit is on special teams. Jets power play is ranked 24th. Their penalty kill is ranked 27th. So the Bruins really need to take advantage of the special teams battle there. Connor Hellebuck, always great for the Jets. He's got a .916 save percentage, 15-6-2 record. And again, Jets led in scoring by Mark Scheifele. One player who won't be in the lineup is Kyle Connor, their second leading scorer. He's out with an injury for like 6 to 8 weeks, so he should miss both games against the Bruins. So it'll be a very tough test for Boston in Winnipeg. Nobody wants to travel to Winnipeg in December, but here we are. And then they will head across the border to take on the Wild on Saturday night, a rematch of this past, Tuesday's game, a 4-3 loss for the Bruins in overtime at the hands of the Wild. Now, unfortunately, the Wild are off tonight, so they'll be getting a rest while the Bruins will be playing, then having to cross the border tonight after the game. Wild will be well rested. What did they do last night? The Wild played the Montreal Canadiens and beat them in overtime. So they're coming off back-to-back overtime wins and looking to ride into the break on a bit of a high after having fired their head coach. They're 7-3 over their past 10. They've won 2 in a row. So again, won't be an easy test for the Bruins, but they'll be looking to finish strong here heading into the break. At present, they are 6 points up on a Maple Leafs team that was embarrassed last night by the Buffalo Sabres. Sabres had a crazy week. They allowed 9 goals to Columbus the other night, scored 9 against Toronto last night. The Panthers are also 6 points back, but they have played 2 more games than the Bruins. 733 point percentage for Boston, plus 20 goal differential. That's a full, Leafs are at 633. They're at plus 7. So Boston clearly the best team in the Atlantic at the moment and looking to keep pace with the New York Rangers atop the East. The Rangers have 1 more point and just 1 fewer goal on their goal differential ladder. And so the Bruins looking to head into the break here red hot. They'll be without Matt Grzelcyk tonight. So we'll see if Lohrei and Witherspoon can step up and guide them to victory. I probably will jump on Saturday or Sunday to discuss these games heading into the holiday break, maybe to break down what happens tonight. I'll maybe jump on tomorrow morning, and then we'll be back on Boxing Day to bring you all the latest on the Black and Gold, because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again here soon.